Today's show, I think, is probably going to go down in history as one of the top shows in the D.H.E. podcast, because today Matt and Oli are walking through what are the 5 steps to actually becoming an entrepreneur. Everyone gets so scared of this journey, this jump, the unknowns, the uncertainty, but it doesn't really have to be an unknown and an uncertain thing. And in today's show, Oli really breaks down what were the 5 things that he thought about as he made the transition into Switchback Foods, into this whole entrepreneur journey, and just giving tips and tricks and practical advice along the way on things that you should be thinking about too if you are looking at this world and if you are looking to become an entrepreneur. So with that, enjoy the show and welcome to another episode of the D.H.E. podcast.
Welcome to episode 2 of the D.H.E. podcast, Dad, Husband, Entrepreneur. My name is Oli Hovde. I am the co-host here with
Matt Adelman. I know I said this last time, but I'm gonna point out one more time. We are not together dads and together husbands. We happen to both be dads and both be husbands.
You always have to point that out.
Because people ask questions, and I'm just setting the record straight. We're just 2 guys that are passionate about these subjects, these topics, and that's what we're bringing to life here.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, this was a podcast that came out of probably 20 hours of thinking about what do we resonate with, and I've used this title for myself for a while. Like, I'm a dad, husband, and entrepreneur. Those are the 3 things. Those are the kind of how I define myself as my role, not my identity. But they're also, to some extent, my identity. I'm a dad and I'm a husband. Those are the 2 things I take most seriously. Then I'm an entrepreneur, which my CFO, who happens to be my dad, would tell you I probably don't take seriously enough at times. But that's by design, because work should be fun. And if you're going to build something and you're not having fun along the way, life is really boring and it sucks and it's miserable and you don't want to go in and do it. So that was the genesis for this podcast. So we know this is episode 2, but we're going to continue to bring you content on crazy things that, one of the things we're going to talk about in the future episode is, how to make sure that your doors in your house are tooth fairy proof, AKA what type of lubricant to put on those doors so your kids don't wake up, to the screeching of the hinges.
Yeah.
Looking at you like,
real
why
dad
are you?
Stuff.
Yeah, real dad stuff. Like, how do you be a better dad, or incremental things to make your dad life a little bit better? I mean,
yeah,
we talked about it this morning. I think we probably spent an hour this morning talking about, just being a dad and how do you deal with kids' meltdowns and kind of the psychology around it. So those are the type of things we're going to talk about today. But I know, Matt, you had some topics you want to bring up today. What were those?
Well, I think you and I are both, you said we are dads and husbands first, but we're very entrepreneur/business focused, right? Like, it's a big part of what we do. We're building a company together. Like, this is 90% of our lives right now in the season that we're in. And so I wanted to talk today about entrepreneurship, and specifically, if I'm listening to this show and maybe I'm in corporate America, maybe I'm doing some sort of job, and I'm like, man, I got the itch. I think I want to do this entrepreneurship. We want to go through, I don't know, we'll call it the 4 or 5 signs that you're ready. And like, what are a couple of things to really think about before you make the jump? So this will be a very entrepreneurship focused show today. I'm sure we'll get into dad and husband stuff along the way because they're so entwined, but let's kick it off there. Let's talk about the entrepreneur journey. Like, how did you know when it was time for you to jump and like, I'm doing Switchback, I'm making this happen, I'm all in?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer? The short answer, I was fired. So I knew I had to do it. No.
Yeah. So back up before that, because before you were let go and all that happened, like, you had already started this thing. You were getting off the ground.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I knew from an early age was I wanted to build something. I enjoy the building process. I enjoy using my hands. And I think being an entrepreneur, whether you're doing tech or you're doing food or whatever, it's using your hands because you got to solve a bunch of different problems. So,
right.
Probably about 6 years ago, a good buddy of mine, Chris Jagoda, gave me a book, and it was called The Power of No by an author, James.
Power of what?
Power of No.
Okay.
James Altucher, who has a great podcast and has written some amazing books and just seems like a down-to-earth, cool dude, has written a number of books. And that was the first book I read. And it was about saying no to the vast majority of things and really guarding your time for what you want to do.
Sure.
Well, a little while later, there was another book that came out, and it was called Choose Yourself. And so the premise, I mean, in a nutshell, and if James ever listens to this podcast, he'd probably slap me. But it's about choosing yourself over choosing, letting someone else dictate your success in corporate America or whatever it might be. And through those 2 books, he always talks about this something unique, and it's always write down 10 business ideas every single day. Now, I will tell you, there were days I got 10, there were days I got 5. But I kept writing down ideas because how my brain thinks is I look at things and I go, can we do this differently?
Yeah.
Can we change it? And if we can't, move on. If we can, maybe it's worth tinkering. I mean, I've written down some ideas that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to solve.
Yep.
I've written down ideas that would cost, thousands of dollars to solve. So I was January of 22, and I knew I wanted to make a smoothie faster and easier. And I started looking at all my notes, and it was amazing to me how many times in this list of 5 to 10 things, smoothie came up. It just kept coming up. I mean, I go back to 2017, 2018, in smoothies.
You are just a smoothie obsessed person, or like what was the why smoothies so often?
Because we were drinking a green smoothie every day, and it was a pain in the ass to make. And so I was like, it sucks to make. I hate pulling out the blender. I hate buying 40 pounds of frozen crap from Costco. So
I bet there was a point that you did like that until you realized how big of a pain in the ass it is.
I mean, I still to this day like a frozen smoothie is great, but it has to be a green smoothie because I'm not just gonna, personally speaking, I'm not just gonna consume a fruit smoothie. I don't get much out of it, but
sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I look at it and I think back to Oli in 2017, and it was all about trying to simplify. We just had our first kid. We wanted to make things easier. We wanted to make things faster, and so that was kind of the weird piece. Like I had all these ideas, and I'll be honest, like I chased like 3 or 4 business ideas until I realized how expensive they were. And then I just kind of, started tinkering and started asking people for advice and what would you do? And I've got this idea. How do you take it to the next step? Before you knew it, I was loading up my family and 3 kids. We went out and bought a freeze dryer. So I think step 1 is identifying the problem you want to solve, or something that you're going to enhance, make better.
Yeah.
And is there market viability there? And we've talked about this a lot. I don't mean that from the sense of like any company you come up with, any product idea you have, someone's probably already done some variation of it.
Yeah.
Screw it. If you trust yourself and you think you can do it, go do it. Because chances are you're going to succeed if you do it the way that you want to do it. I mean, look at how many companies out there would not be in existence if someone Googled, is there a taxi cab company? Oh, wow, there's 900 cab companies in America. Like, I mean, look at all these sports performance beverages. Like, is there Gatorade? Or the one I always go back to, like the guy that founded Viore and, $4 billion brand. Do you think he could have Googled, are there shorts I can wear from the gym to the work to golf? Nike, Under Armour, like all these companies would have popped up.
Yeah.
He could have just stopped because he would have said, oh, there's just 27 athleisure companies.
Well, there is a bajillion companies and a bajillion competition on also, Oli just lost his camera. There's always competition. There's always going to be other people doing the things that you're looking at doing. But I think I want to go back to something you said, and this is key when you're thinking about ideas and concepts. You said, I always want to improve. I always wanted to make things better. I always was like messing around with stuff. Have you heard of an intrapreneur? Have you heard that term? I have not. So entrepreneurs are people that go start businesses. Intrapreneurs would be someone internally in a company that is, they're entrepreneurially minded, but they're building within their company. And like think there, like start even there. Are you the person at work who's looking at the process or looking at the thing you're doing or the product you're making? Yeah. And are you the person who's thinking, how do we do this better? How do we make this better? How do we do this? How do we do something above and beyond what we're already doing? Are you an entrepreneur? Because if you are and you already have that thought process, it is actually pretty easy to make the jump. If you aren't, if you don't think that way, if you're not already thinking, how do I improve? How do I make it better? Good luck becoming an entrepreneur and starting a company, because like that has to be the thought process.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I think we've discussed this. I'm a shitty employee, and I'll stick to that because a lot of these companies, right? When you are an entrepreneur inside a company, a lot of times you're slapped down because people don't want that. And then if you're sitting there, if you're like me and you're like, man, I'm a shitty employee, you're probably actually an entrepreneur. You're probably someone that should be doing this for yourself. Because usually I find entrepreneurs are really bad employees because they don't tolerate the BS and they want to push boundaries, which most companies don't accept and they don't want. I will say one interesting thing too is as I was spent my former life selling insurance, I thought it was interesting how many of these companies you reach out to, and it's like, these companies are, 20 million, 50 million, hundreds of millions of dollars that were 20 years old.
Right.
And you just ask like, hey man, how'd you start this business? Or ask it to the gal that started it. And they go, yeah, I had an idea. I just started with one thing and one thing led to two and two led to three led to four. And yeah, now I've got this company. And you're like, oh, wow. So like, it just literally the catalyst was, do you want to do it?
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing is like, do you want to do it and are you prepared to do it is really step one.
So if you're listening to us and this jives with you, right? Like, okay, you're going to kick that damn thing over.
I know. I got to move around. I fidget too much. Yeah. Can you tell I'm an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Yes. But you got an idea. Like it all starts with an idea, right? It starts with, I think I can do something differently, better, more uniquely, or I just really like this space and I want to get into it. So it starts with an idea, starts with a mindset. What's the next thing? Like what happens after you've got this idea and you start messing around a little bit and playing with it?
Stop there for 1 second. I think the other thing is like, you got an idea, you want to make something better. The biggest piece of advice is like, don't listen to all the naysayers. You are going to talk about this with friends. You're going to talk about this with family. And you're going to get a lot of people that tell you it's a dumb idea, it's whatever. But here's the deal. Like people tell you it's a dumb idea when they're envious. And
or they just don't know.
Or bingo. They just don't understand because that's not how their brain thinks. So we can discuss this whole concept of like not using outside counsel at some point in the future, because I learned I got a crash course in that last summer. But I just want to bring that up. So step two is prove the concept. Go out there, tinker, make a prototype. At least in my mind, you got to go out there. So for me, the second step was I went out there, I did the research, bought a freeze dryer, and I started tinkering. And that was really like a low key, pretty low point of entry for step two. And then getting feedback. So from my perspective, I started asking for feedback from a lot of different people along the way. And the way I asked for feedback was, I knew that if I went to people that I knew and that liked me, I would get unbelievably biased feedback.
Yeah.
So I started just going to random people and be like, hey, this is my buddy's company. He's terrified to talk to people, but he's a scientist. He's a chemist. Would you try this and give me feedback? And people were calling me like, hey man, this thing's amazing. When can I buy it? So that's kind of how I knew that we proved, we validated the concept. When people started asking to buy it before I was ready to actually sell it,
yeah,
I knew that we had something that was worth pursuing. Now, in fairness, not everybody's going to get to that point. You may just be so damn passionate about something and you're an expert in it. Go figure out how to make money in it. Maybe you don't know how to make money, but you're ready to start doing it. That's kind of the next step is how are you going to monetize this and how are you going to pull everything together and make sure it works? So I would say that's the second major step from my perspective of how you go from idea to concept, kind of prove that concept.
And I'll give a little color and industry that I'm in the real estate side. A lot of people talk about real estate investing. They get very nervous about it. In 2013, 2011, way back when, I sat down with who I thought was the smartest financial person I knew. Super successful, like had a great house, like really had their shit together from a corporate finance standpoint. Overachiever, like big shot, high level ranking position. And I said, I want to start investing in houses. I got this idea. I want to do this thing. And back to your point about getting outside feedback, she said, why would you do that? That's stupid. Real estate's risky. We just went through a recession. Why would you jump in, right? Now, hindsight, that was the absolute greatest, best time to ever get into real estate in the history of this freaking world, right? And I completely missed it because I listened to the advice of someone who was not in the space and didn't understand it. So what I should have done, and this is along your point, you made a product, you started showing people, you got feedback. In real estate investing or like a SaaS business or consulting or something like that, if that's your shtick and what you're trying to build, What I should have done is just started analyzing deals. I should have been like, okay, well, if I had $100,000 to go buy something, what would I buy? And I should have gone and figured out like, okay, this building here, I could buy it for X, it rents for Y. Here's my payments, like I should have built the model. And if it made sense and like showed a financial benefit at the end of the day, like what other proof do you need? Do you know what I mean?
You bring up a couple interesting points. Number one, it's like the Warren Buffett theory, right? I think I don't know if this is actually true, but I've heard people say like, here's theory is if the company's gonna be around in 20 years, invest in it because it's gonna make more money in 20 years than it makes today. So kind of a fascinating thing, like commercial real estate, wherever it is. Like if you think it's gonna be around in 20 years, go invest in it. There's gonna be ups, there's gonna be downs. Like it happens in every industry. But in terms of the financial model, I think that brings up a great point that I can't overlook. And I'm not a finance guy. I went to the University of Minnesota and I was dead set I was gonna be president of the United States. And I like just fucked that up really bad. And have no interest in running for office. God bless those of you that do. But I'm the black sheep of my family. So I'm the youngest of four. My dad was a CFO. My two brothers and my sister we're all finance or accounting majors. I like to give them shit. They're bean counters, like good for you. The world needs bean counters. But I graduated and went into, initially health insurance, bounced around, whatever. I never really understood the power of what a creative CFO and what a brilliant CFO can do.
Yeah.
And it was shortly into my journey when I, had tested this concept, into Switchback. And I given some samples to my parents. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And my dad looked at me. He's like, this sounds disgusting. Not going to touch it. I was like, just try them. And like 2 weeks later, my dad calls me panicking. He's like, we need more. Like at first I thought like mom died because my dad's like, just like hyperventilating. Well, it turns out they drank the smoothies and they really liked them. Well, it was maybe a week or two later, my dad called. He's like, hey, I want to do all your finances, your modeling, et cetera. And I'm like, well, why? Like you and we're so similar. My mom calls us the clones. We butt heads a lot. You can probably hear that in phone calls. Like we kind of annoy each other, but we love each other greatly. And the interesting part about it was like, I had this idea in my head of here's what I think it's going to cost. Here's what I want to sell it for. And that's all I had. Which in retrospect is really stupid because I didn't line item cost for marketing. I didn't line item like, what does the packaging film cost? How much is shipping? Well, it turns out I was directionally accurate. And the best part about it though is we were able to build this financial model with my dad, which we've now since thrown out like 27 times because we keep failing on projections. But at least we know what our product costs, what the raw material costs. We know everything about this business, which I would argue most companies don't. And I think you probably see that from your time in retail. How many times did you get pitched? You probably asked them a question. They're like, I have no idea. I don't know what my gross margin is. I don't know what this is. And there are certain things you learn, but don't underestimate the power of that financial model. So if you have an idea, you're going to go out there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what the big gurus are going to tell you about, testing hypotheses. If the financial model doesn't check out, think about how you can make it work because that you're going to live and die by that. Yeah. And
we are in the business of making money. Even if you're a nonprofit, like you still have to be sustainable.
Absolutely.
You can. It is very hard to rely on handouts and grants and gifts. Like it or not, you don't have to be the finance expert, but you do have to have some sort of financial analysis and an idea of how is this thing going to work. But I want to point out one thing because this comes up a lot in a lot of entrepreneurs' journeys where they get fixated on the finances or they don't understand how to do it or the whole analysis paralysis thing. It shouldn't what you were saying is you had a general idea of cost, like you had an idea and you made a product, you had an idea of what you could charge for it. And then you made it and you just started going. You didn't go get a loan for $1 million and go buy, $1 million of shit hoping it would work. You had an idea, you started a little small, you started testing it, and then you went and luckily, it happens to be your dad, but then you brought in someone who really understands finance to help you. Like, go find a finance person if you don't have someone in your family.
And find someone that's creative and talented. And I mean this. Like, don't go hire your buddy who's a controller. He's not going to do anything for you. Like, sorry, but I spent the last decade selling to finance people, controllers are not going to help you. I mean, they can tell you everything that happened in the last 12 months, but like, you need someone creative that can see the future and see the vision.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, like you hear a lot, and LinkedIn's just filled with, CFO, CEO partnerships. Like it's the biggest myth in business because most CFOs aren't that talented. But you look at it, like if you have a talented CFO, you should, as the founder or as the entrepreneur,
just a talented financial friend.
Talented financial friend. Yeah. You don't need, like, I don't think about this all day, every day, my finances. I have a general idea. I know what we need to do. That's what my dad does for me. He keeps us on the rails, keeps me in check, makes sure and he holds me to a very high standard that frustrates me at times because I like to be a little whimsical, but that is something that is going to fail. Your business will fail if you lose control of the finances. Trust me. Like I almost did it to myself. I've seen many friends do it. It is one of those things that like, you a talented finance professional helping you, guiding you, giving you consulting, giving you advice. That is probably, in my actually jumping back, that's probably the most important aspect to starting a business. The idea is great, but if you don't have someone that can keep you on the rails from a finance perspective, you may as well just light the idea on fire.
Well, can I give counterpoint to that?
Yes.
Not to be controversial, but I agree 100% with what you're saying. There are so many businesses out there that don't do anything that you just talked about. Case in point, the consulting group that I'm a part of. Sorry guys, I've got a couple things I'm working on at this stage of my life. You'll understand more in future episodes. But the consulting group that I'm a part of, we're bringing in millions of dollars a year. If I was to ask him what his profit was, he'd have no idea. What do we make per customer? No idea. What is our revenue goal? I don't know. Make more money. Like, he doesn't look at it. He doesn't care. He cares, but literally his view of finances is, do I have cash in the bank account right now?
Yeah. But that's so many businesses. Like I can't tell you.
Right. That's my point is like, what you're talking about, having your dad and having a model and like really paying attention to the finances, that is what ultimately businesses need to do.
Yeah.
When I was at Target or Orlando Lakes or any of the big companies I've ever worked at, every Monday, I pulled numbers. I went in the financials. I looked at profit. I looked at margin. I looked at revenue. I looked at sales. Like I was the data analytics dude, right? Like
you are now my quant.
But eventually you have to get there. Like you've got to understand the stuff at some point. But again, I don't want someone listening to be like, well, Matt Noli said I got to have this model. And like, this should not be an excuse to not get started in my book. It should be something to work towards and strive for and have an idea, but like you got to go and you got to test and you got to start.
100%. You got to just put one foot in front of the other and go. And I think a lot about the book, the movie What About Bob? Baby Steps. It's all about baby steps. And
baby steps to the elevator.
One of the greatest movies ever made. It was so true though. Like, and even with the finance model, like if you have a rough idea, like if you want to create something to sell for $10, but you know it's going to cost you $14 to make it, like that doesn't work.
Yes.
But you have to have some sort of rough idea, rough semblance of what it is. And I also think the other thing is like, there's so many pioneers out there in different, and we are definitely a Switchback, not pioneers. Like we're just doing something cool, having fun with it. But like there are pioneers that can get you to pay a ridiculous amount of money, way overspend compared to anybody else, just because they built a brand around it. Like I think about Apple. Is an Apple charger really any better than a charger made out of some Chinese factory that doesn't have Apple? Probably not, but it's $29 versus $299. But right. You're like, even me with my MacBook, I'm like, oh man, I need a new charger. I better go buy the Apple certified one that's, $79.
Yeah.
So you can do it. You can, but it's going to take some time to build that brand and get people comfortable with it, because there are a lot of people. I mean, just look at the food industry. Look at how many expensive brands. I mean, look at I don't know. Jack Links is a great example. Like it's expensive stuff. People buy it because they believe it's going to make them feel good. So you can absolutely tap into that.
Yeah. So continuing on this journey, let's bring it back to I'm most likely I'm in corporate America, or maybe you are entrepreneurs listening and you looking for a couple tips and tricks on our take on things. So we got an idea for a concept. We've tested it a little bit. We've talked to people. We've got some feedback. We're iterating. We're getting to what we think is about right. We're getting a pretty good idea of the finances, at least, directionally speaking. Like, how did you go from freeze dried in your garage making samples to like, okay, let's pack this thing. Like, let's make a product.
Yeah, I mean, weird situation. Like I said, I handed them out to a bunch of people. And then I had some really good friends. The Creary family were just big supporters from day one when they tried it. And so they were handing out to friends and family. People were like, hey, how can I buy it? How do I get it? How do I do this? And so, what I learned along that journey was taking it from concept, like I'm making it in my kitchen, to like, someone else is actually doing this for me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of steps I kind of glossed over in my mind, and then you start to get hit in the face. So, things that you need to think about, and some mistakes that we made, we won't go into them right now, but we can in future episodes. But like, you got to find a marketing firm, you got to find a branding firm, and you got to find a branding firm that you trust, that aligns with you, that's looking to do the same things that you want to do, that's going to help you build that. We had to find a food science firm because we needed to do a couple of things. We needed to check out a couple of things. We needed regulatory sign off on things. And then, it was the fun aspect of trying to get attention as a startup with co-packers. So for those of you that don't know what that is, so most of your food isn't actually made by the label on the company, on the package. It's made by a giant company that just manufactures for hundreds, if not thousands of different people every single day.
Because manufacturing is very expensive.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was like, in the early days, I was like, I'm going to buy my own freeze dry facility. I'm going to do all this stuff myself. And then my dad's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
No. I'm like, yeah, I am. And I started looking, I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, $10 million for one building because it's food grade. So you start just kind of figuring all this stuff out. So then all of a sudden you're talking with a co-manufacturer, and you find someone. So, I called about 70 co-manufacturers across the US, and I got return phone calls from 2. One of them I sent a sample to, and they would not return my phone calls. So like, go screw yourselves. But this one co-man took me under their wing, and they were amazing to work with because they taught me a lot. I still made mistakes. I still didn't trust things they said. And that was kind of the big learning curve for me. There was, there are so many parts and pieces, from buying your packaging, your corrugated, your final packaging, shipping, fulfillment.
Yes.
Like, there's a million parts and pieces, and luckily there's a million people out there that can guide you through it. But I made some catastrophic, stupid mistakes that cost us dearly because I was like, I'm going to save money. And I think that's a good place to interject. Like, you want to take it from concept to reality. If you were sitting here and you're like, we have this budget, because that's what I was. I was trying to operate for the first time in my life within the realm of a budget. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, well, we can save money by hiring these guys.
Yeah.
Or we can save money by doing this. And now we're spending 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times the amount of money to unwind that stupid mistake that I made.
Yeah.
And I loved it. My dad gave me a great piece of advice. He goes, Ole, there's two things you can do catastrophic wrong. But number one, the worst mistake you can make in business is not making a decision. So a bad decision is better than not making a decision. And the second one is, when you make a bad decision, correcting that bad decision instead of just doubling down and saying, no, we're going to be okay. And so luckily we've gotten through number 1 and number 2, and hopefully we don't make those moving forward with some of the things we've done. But I think that's a big piece that people don't think about, is just all of these little parts and pieces and pulling all this stuff together. And oh, by the way, nobody is going to act with the urgency that you have for your business. And I think that's a piece that just drives me up a wall. Like, you want it to be done now, and they're like, oh, we can do it in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, no, I want it done now.
Why did you decide that you wanted to go the co-man route, mass production, lots of product being made, versus like, hey, I'm going to just hand pack this stuff to start. I'm going to start small. I'm just going to start in the Minneapolis market. I'm going to do farmers markets, like the really small scale way of testing this. I mean, you jumped right in. You went full scale food production, big time companies producing this stuff. Yeah,
so that's a really good question. That really boiled down to a couple things. Number one, I'm not really comfortable eating food that's made out of someone else's kitchen, or even like a small little commercial kitchen. So there was that. Like I felt like if we wanted to build a brand, we needed nice looking stuff. We could do it in the little brown craft bags that we're doing, heat seal them. The oxygen moisture barrier wasn't that great. So probably had like a 1 month shelf life on a lot of stuff, maybe 2 months before it really started to clump. So that was a big decision in it, is when you're dealing with freeze dried product, you need to make sure the packaging, we couldn't get really good film, at least at the size that we were looking for, Amazon or these other companies. So we kind of had to jump right in. The second thing is, if we wanted to make something professional, what I very quickly learned was everybody has a minimum. Most of the co-mans out there that are doing sachets or stick packs are like, how many are you gonna do? And I would throw out the number. They'd be like, we're not gonna do it. We need 275,000 per SKU if we're gonna touch you. And I'm like, what? Okay. And kudos to the co-man that I use, because I screwed up and I was like 15,000 under their minimums, but they took me under their wing and they taught me, and I'm forever grateful and loyal to those guys. But that was really the big reason why I didn't just go to farmers markets and hand out, brown craft paper bags full of these things. Was I wanted to make sure that the product quality was there. I wanted the consistency, and I wanted something that actually looked really good.
Sure.
And then the other piece was like, food safety is a big deal to me. I grew up around the food industry to some extent, and I really just didn't want to risk putting something out there that was going to be a big issue sitting outside. Those brown craft bags that I was using that were zippered and then heat sealed, they were great for about 3 to 4 weeks. They were good, and then they would start to clump, which wasn't a food safety issue, but it's more a product quality. Exactly. And so we realize we're going to have product issues. We realize that stuff is going to clump. It's a nature of the business. It's a nature of our food, but we're going to try and do everything we can to eliminate it. So that was one of the reasons why we didn't go small. And then the other piece was time. That was probably the biggest piece. Even though it was more expensive to pass this off to someone else, the time savings, having someone else manufacture it, I couldn't make 1,000 of these things. I mean, I could make, I think when Andrew came over one day, we made about 1,200, and it took us 9 hours.
1,200 sticks?
1,200 sachets. 1,200 servings.
Smoothie packs.
I mean, and plus there's green powder everywhere. My daughter came in. It looked like she had walked in a rainbow after she walked through the house. Like I wanted to stay married. So we decided to take this thing full steam ahead. Plus, there was no product like it on the market that I could find that had the same quality, consistency, flavor. Yeah.
You felt good about the launch. I think the decision to go big or stay small, like really at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's the comfort level of the founder and the person that's moving forward. But I will say, going big or going small, you have the exact same challenges that you have to work through either way. You still got to figure out marketing and branding and messaging. You still got to figure out where you're going to sell your stuff. You're still going to need some sort of platform to sell on, right? Like going back to the real estate world, and I don't know why these keep popping in my head, but you talk to someone who buys a couple single family houses because that's where they say it's safe to start, it's easier, whatever, right? You talk to any of those guys a couple years later, and what do they all say? Man, I should have just bought an apartment to start with. Man, I should have just jumped into bigger deals to start with. Because at the end of the day, assuming you have the capital to do it, I understand capital is a big constraint here, but at the end of the day, the work is exactly the same. Whether it's 4 single family houses or a 40 unit apartment, you are literally just finding tenants to rent. Like the numbers are the numbers are the numbers are the numbers. They just have an extra zero. The tasks are the same. In commercial insurance, people say that all the time, like quit chasing the $25,000 deals and chase the $250,000 deals. It takes the same amount of time, which to some extent, people have a hard time making that jump though in their heads.
I think depending on what you're doing, absolutely, because there tends to be a lot more roadblocks in your mind to think like, can I sell that deal? Can I get in front of that person? I mean, frankly, the difference between someone, CFO of a $250,000 insurance deal versus a $25,000 insurance, probably not that much different. They're probably not, super insurance savvy. Same thing in the housing market. Guy going out there buying a 10 unit building versus a 1 unit building. Probably not a whole lot of difference. Am I right?
Not really. I mean, the person who, like, if you were to launch Switchback into farmers markets, it's really not all that different than showing it's Costco, right? Like, you still got to convince people. Actually, you still need the product. Like,
I would argue Costco's easier.
Way easier.
Because, like,
they're experts at it.
What I've learned about farmers markets is these are a bunch of little, like, I don't know. It's just a bunch of little fiefdoms, and they want like it's weird. I don't know. Have you ever been to a farmer's market and like you actually look at what these people are putting on their truck, and it's like Dole, and it's all these big like farmers markets aren't really farmers markets, at least not in the Midwest. Like people are going to the big produce companies, buying a truckload of product and offloading it at a farmer's market to make money.
Right. There is a lot of that.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, I mean, I think like you may as well go after the big ones, and while you're at it, but you also have to hedge your bet, right? You need to go after some easier wins. You need to build that up, so you have that opportunity to go after the big guys. I'm
a fan of testing and learning. I'm a fan of having some sort of financials, some sort of model. Try it small scale to start. But what I want you to hear us say is, when you're ready, don't be afraid to make that jump. If you believe in this thing and you are financially mostly solvent and like you got your head on straight, like you can jump bigger than you think you can. If you've got a decent idea, product, concept, and you can actually fulfill and execute. Yeah, and I think brought up an interesting point. Like, financially solvent is a funny term to me, because a lot of our well-known entrepreneurs, they were not financially solvent. Like they were putting everything on the line, and that it brings up a great question, like a great point. If you're going to go out there and build a business, if you are afraid of losing everything you have, and you think it's the end of the world, just stop and stay in corporate America. But if you are okay losing stuff and telling your family, hey, we got to downsize, we got to sell this, we got to sell that. Yeah. Then you're probably ready to make that jump. I think the other piece that I would also encourage you, like if you're sitting there listening to this, or you stumble across this, if you can take one point too, it's you need to be in the right mental state. You need to have the right. You need to have the demons somewhat conquered if you want to do it, because we've talked about this quite a bit. Like this is just it's a very lonely, shitty journey to be an entrepreneur for the most part, right? People see our packaging, people reach out to me on LinkedIn, and they make it seem like I'm this multi-million-dollar company. And meanwhile, I'm like, dude, like we're still small. Like it's still just me and Matt volunteers here. What did you say this morning when we're thousandaires? Yeah, when we're a multi-$1,000 company, we are going to have so much fun. But like you got to have fun, but you also need to get those demons in check. And so nothing wrong with going and seeing a psychologist if you're struggling. Nothing wrong with talking with your friends. But biggest thing, just get that stuff taken care of, because I struggled with alcohol addiction. And I can't imagine 5 years ago, if I would have said 6 years ago, I'm going to start this company, it wouldn't exist. And nor would anybody have trusted me, because I wasn't a trustworthy individual 6 years ago when I was getting drunk 6 nights a week. And it doesn't, the mindset thing, it doesn't have to be something major like you're saying. I think even if you're the type of person who can't accept responsibility, who has to point the finger at other people, it's always someone else's fault, right? Like if that's how you default, it's going to be very hard to start a company, in my opinion. It's going to be really hard to weather the storms. It's going to be really hard to be like, I don't really give a shit whose fault it was. Like we got to get this thing fixed. Do you know what I mean? 100%. Because being an entrepreneur, you don't get to blame other people. I mean, you know, Matt, we've had plenty of stumbles and challenges. I don't sit here and blame these other people. The first thing I say is, oh shit, I made a mistake. I did this or I did that. Yeah, other people contributed to it, but usually the problem starts with you. And you need to be able to, you need to own up and admit when you did something stupid and fix it, so that you don't continue down that path. I mean, it's kind of like the joke I make, right? I'm a shitty employee. I've owned up to it. I know it. If you want to hire me, like cool, but you just need to know I'm not going to tolerate a bunch of bullshit and a bunch of, corporate America BS that everybody else likes to discuss. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast on the way here this morning, and along this mental toughness idea, they were talking about how to start your day, right? I'm not a huge routine person. I know they work for some people. I think I need to be a little bit better. But the routine that she was talking about that she does every single day is she wakes up, and the very first thing she does is she reads. She reads something positive, something
absolutely,
something good, some sort of positivity. She doesn't check her phone. She doesn't go on social media. She doesn't do anything. She reads something positive. And then what she did is she prays, and this is not like a Christian-based thing or anything, but it's just the lady's example. She reads, and I think it's the Bible. She reads the Bible or reads some sort of verse. She prays, and then she like ponders / meditates, right? And what she was getting at is I need positivity in my mind when I start the day. I need to like reflect on that positivity to get my mind ready. Like, hey, you might have challenges and bumps today, but we can get through it. And then it's the whole like power of perseverance type idea, right? Like this mindset thing, if you don't have it now, you can train it, you can do it, but you've got to figure out a way to be able to look at the positives, to persevere, to deal with the bumps, to deal with the shit that's going to come your way, really, right?
You took that in a different direction than I thought. I thought you were going to be like, you need to do a cold plunge at 4 and a 2-hour workout if you want to be a Navy SEAL and so tough and like mindset. Like, guys, that's bullshit. Like, very few people live that regimented. So if someone tells you that you need to wake up and do all this stuff I just said, like, just give them the middle finger. But yes, you're right. Like, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot to that. I mean, I think about when I wake up in the morning, I try not to check my phone. I try to usually journal for 5 to 7 minutes, throw my thoughts down. What did I do the day before? And then a lot of times, it's power of affirmations. It's positive affirmations, and it's really just how do you talk to yourself so that when bad stuff comes your way, because it's going to, you know how to handle it, and you're prepared to handle that. I think there's a lot to that. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm just sick of all the people that want to tell you if you don't get up and at 3 a.m. and work out or 4 a.m. and do this, like, dude. Come on, it's business. It's not life and death.
Yeah, well, not our business, thankfully.
Most businesses are not life and death.
So, all right, man, we've sort of tracked the journey from I've got an idea. Well, first of all, I've got the drive to do this thing in the first place. I think I have I'm sort of an entrepreneurially minded person. I want to give this a shot. You get a concept, you get an idea, you figure out what is your little specialty or your niche that you're going after. You get some sort of proof of concept. You get a product, a platform, a service, whatever it is that you're trying to build and make. Get an idea of the finances. Like, this isn't rocket science stuff. This is how almost every company starts. And then you get ready for all the shit that's going to come your way, because there's going to be a bunch. What is the next? Well, you had a launch plan. I guess that's in there too. How am I going to get this thing? Am I going to scale it up from the start? Am I going to be small from the start? Am I going to test and learn? Talk us through. Now, you did all of this while you were employed. You were a full W-2 employee, or I don't know if it was W-2, but you were employed at a company, making a salary, making an income. Now, you got fired or let go, but you knew that was coming. That was kind of intentional on your part. So it wasn't like, oh my God, what happened? Surprise. How do you look at making the jump? How do you advise people? You did all the stuff we just talked about. Now you're ready to go. You're doing this full time. Like, when is the time to do that?
Number one, if you're married or you have a long-term partner, talk with them. Make sure they're on the same page. My wife, Carly's unbelievably supportive. She loves what I'm doing. And so, like, I'll tell you, like, this would not be enjoyable if my spouse was not on board with this, because I mean, if she's like, no, like money, like, it would be like, I couldn't do it. Right. There's no way I could have left what I was doing before. So number one is make sure if you're married, you have a spouse, significant other, like, have that conversation, because that's going to be imperative. I think the next thing is you just got to kind of create a cutting off point, right? Don't jump before you have to. That's a lot of advice that I got. But from my perspective, I mean, October 1 of this year was when I was going to probably, put in the letter of resignation and just be done. Unfortunately, it came a couple months sooner from an income perspective, but it is what it was. So, I mean, I knew it was going to come. I shouldn't say that. I actually didn't know if they were going to do it, because at the end of the day, I was producing business and I feel like a pretty good part of the office. But The best part is I called my wife, told her, she's like, great, move on. Called my dad. My dad's like, you should have quit 60 days ago. So like the two most important people in my business journey were completely supportive. So but I think that's the thing is like choose a jumping off point. Choose a point where you are going to stay. Maybe it's a revenue threshold for your business. Maybe it's a jumping off point. The one thing I want to stress is like, don't kill yourself in this process. If you're working 160, if you're working 100 hours a week between these two jobs, like, and you're not loving it, you got to choose one or the other, or get rid of both, or whatever. But don't do it if it's not enjoyable. And so let's say you're working two jobs, set thresholds, set like, this is how much money I need to live, or this is the date that I'm going to jump off and go do this full time. Because I think about it, there was a lot. I mean, you know how busy we've been this last month and a half. If I was still employed,
oh yeah,
I would be in tears every night going home because I'd be so stressed out. And that's just the reality of it, because there's no way I could have dealt with it. So I think it was God's way of telling me like, dude, you need to go focus on Switchback, and you can't have anything else in your life from a work perspective. So that's the advice I give you: is it jump off date or income threshold from the new business?
I appreciate the openness and the honesty here, because we talked about this earlier. You and we're not going to make excuses, and we certainly are not going to make excuses for anyone here that is going to tell us why they can't do something, right? You can do it. We're not saying you have to hustle. This hustle culture, work two jobs, work yourself to death. Maybe in your 20s, maybe. But when you have kids and your dad and your husband and you're trying to do this stuff, like, it's really, really damn hard to work 100-hour work weeks and still have a family life and still raise kids. So
and is it worth it?
It's not. I don't think it is. Like, that's part of where I was going to go with this. Like, you have to understand what you're trying to build and why. And when your why is that strong and your family's on board and people support you, I think then it's time to make the jump. Then it's time to focus, because it's also, while I say I'm not a big fan of hustle culture, like, I've done it, right? I've built businesses while I was W-2'd. I've lived this life and done these things. It is very, very, very hard to do when you are not focused on one thing. And when you can finally focus on one thing, like, that's when all the magic happens. So,
and what do you care about? That's the biggest question that you got to ask yourself. At least that I had to ask myself, is what do I care about? I was on a path to making great money and very comfortable, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I struggled with this for a while, because I was asking myself, like, am I copying out because I don't really like it? Am I just making an excuse because I don't enjoy this industry?
Yeah.
Or am I being honest with myself? And the more reflection, the more talking with my mentors, the more talking with people in my life, they all say the same thing. Like, you're not just a sales guy, man. You're not going to be fulfilled whether you make a $500,000, million, or $10 million a year selling insurance. You are not going to be happy, because that is all you're going to be identified as. That's all you're going to do. You want to help people. You want to change the world. You want to lead. You want to build. And so I think that's a big piece of it, is you need to figure out what are those priorities? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And just go do it. Because at the end of the day, you get one shot. I know it's cliche. I know it's stupid, but like, I just think about that all the time. I get one opportunity.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this yesterday briefly. My kids take so much pride in Switchback. They take so much pride in what I'm doing. They never took pride in me selling insurance. Everybody I know in insurance whose kids take pride in their parents selling insurance take pride in the fact that their parents are extremely wealthy. Not that they're stoked by the product, they love it, they enjoy it, etc.
And they only care about the wealthy part if their parents are. Maybe let me say it a different way. I don't think kids really do give a shit about the money part of what their parents are doing if their parents aren't there. Like, sure, you can buy things and do trips and whatever, but like you said this yesterday, when I'm 85 years old, are my kids going to be like, oh, thank you for busting your ass for 30 years and never seeing me and not being a part of my childhood and not being at my events and stuff? No, really appreciate the life that we were able to live through that. Like, no.
Those words will never be said. I think that's one of the scary but fascinating things about where we are as a culture right now, and I know we went from the entrepreneur's journey to this, but so many people are so money focused, and I get it. Like I always think of Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. These are fun coupons, because really, like, at the end of the day, right? Money is just a fun coupon. Like, you can go do, crazier, weirder stuff. But why is it that so many people that have very little money compared to middle class or upper middle class America can be so happy and enjoy life so much, when those with $500,000 a year incomes are stressed out and pissed off, honking their horn, screaming at their neighbor, fighting over their grass, whatever it might be? But yet you drive through rural Minnesota and you see someone who's probably knocking down 40, 45,000 a year. They're happy as a clam, man. I got this funny story of us leaving a client meeting in rural Minnesota, driving in this small town, and there's weeds, like over, like foot high weeds in this yard. And there's an inflatable pool.
Yeah.
And there's a couple kids jumping in the pool, and there's mom and dad sitting there holding cans of Coke or beer. I have no idea. And this is like a Wednesday at like 1:00. And the kids were smiling and laughing. The parents were sitting there with a big smile on their face. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do they know that I don't know?
Yeah.
Because I'm stressed out. I got to get to my next meeting. I'm worried about getting fired. I'm worried about saying the right thing. But here these people are just happy as a clam. Because I think the thing is, they're living.
Yeah.
How often in corporate America did we live? Don't give me the bullshit that, like, oh, you got to go to this golf tournament or you got to go to this event. That's not living, because that's not something you just chose to do. You're doing it because you have to.
Yeah, it doesn't fill your cup.
Bingo. So I think that's the moral of the story. Just go live the life you want to live. Maybe you want to work on a cruise ship. I know I've said that many times. Maybe you want to go be a mountain guide. Maybe you want to go work at a restaurant in Aspen, Colorado. I have no idea.
Yep.
Go do what you want to do. Enough doing shit for other people, because guess what? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Except you. If you care and you're happy, then that really... I understand this is like pie in the sky. What utopian world do we live in? But like, that's what I'm working towards. I turned 41 later this year, and I still haven't figured out how to do all this stuff. Like, every day is a work in progress. Am I happy? Am I excited? Like, are my kids, do they enjoy being with me? It's still...
Do you really think it's a utopian view?
I think it's a not normal view of, like, most people don't think about this stuff, unfortunately, in the society we live in.
So how do we get people to actually think about that and go chase what they want to do in their dreams? Or a better question.
Well, hopefully by episode 999, we're going to have a little more advice on how we've made that happen. And
so in 4 days.
Yeah, right.
But seriously, what is... I am so curious about that. How do you get people to go do that without spending $12,000 on some guru podcast or guru 3-day thing that most people are going to leave and probably not implement? But that is the ultimate question I have: is how do you encourage people to go do that? Because that's what the happiest people I know do.
Yeah, I think this will be future discussion points on this topic, because I don't know, but I'd love to explore this as we go and get feedback from people. Like, what do you think, listener? Like, drop us a note. Like, how do you answer all these questions? Because I have a couple ideas, but what do I know?
Maybe we'll have you on the podcast. Maybe we can solve this. But
we're gonna table that one for next episode, because that's not next episode, but coming up at some point.
It's a great question.
Yeah,
and it's something that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out. I mean, my only 2 cents in that, in a real quick version, is this: when I am the least happy, I am comparing myself to someone else. I am lowering my worth based off of someone else's.
Yes.
And so when I look back to selling insurance, you're selling to these CFOs. CFOs allegedly make a lot of money, although most CEOs don't pay their CFOs worth crap, which is kind of funny. But you look at it and you go, I immediately, because they had this title, I thought of myself as less. And that's my headspace. That's my problem.
Yes.
And now the way I look at it is, I don't really care. I mean, I just don't care what you do, who you are. I'm the one guy that I don't care if you're a professional athlete, a musician, who it is. I don't care. You're just a person. And if you're not a good person, I don't want to hang out with you. And I don't know. It's kind of a funny side note. Like I always think everybody's obsessed with Taylor Swift. And I'm like, it's on the news. She's on the news every day. I'm like, who gives a shit? Seriously, who cares? She sings songs. She doesn't care about you. The only thing she cares about is your money. So think about that. Next time you're gonna give someone a bunch of money at a concert or like a football game, like,
well, we might edit this part out because I'll ask you the question, like the obvious question, then like what's different about Switchback? If Taylor Swift automatically doesn't care, then why should they assume that we do?
My response to that would be, I think when you look at us, we care. We're putting a product out there that's going to change your life, that's going to help you, that's going to empower you to fundamentally live a better life, health and nutrition wise. When I look at sports and I look at professional entertainers, I always struggle because I'm like, they don't care. If you can't pay your bills, Taylor Swift doesn't care. There's a big. I'm going to argue
this one time because I would say maybe she doesn't. I'm not a Taylor Swift advocate, right? Like I enjoy her stuff, but I would say she's actually spreading a shit ton of happiness and joy because look at your kid's face when her songs come on. Like my wife literally gets up and dances when Taylor Swift comes on, right? Like my wife's best friend flew to Dallas to go see Taylor Swift concert. Came back the same day because that was the only ticket she could find, and like she just absolutely is so happy and loves listening to her stuff. So like maybe her purpose is nothing but happiness in the lives of children and moms.
I'll give you that point.
Maybe she doesn't necessarily care per se, but her mission is I'm going to provide happiness.
I'm the only adult who's ever fallen asleep at a Taylor Swift concert.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I do. I don't listen to music. I was like, this is like the third song. No, you take flack for this, but the third song.
I get
it was
what
all
you're
the
saying,
same
though.
shit. I'm like, dude, like, is this over yet?
Yeah.
When my wife told me it was a 3-hour, she's going to dance and sing for 3 hours. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
And it was the largest concert in like the history of concerts.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But like, again, that's my perspective. I don't see that. I don't get it. Like, I'm like, it's cool. It's a song. But then again, that's not the part of me that I don't have any like artsy part of me. Kind of like me in athletics. Like, I don't understand grown adults that go freak out over meeting a professional sports person.
Oh, dude, we're going to talk about this in the future. The whole sports. I'm a sports fan, but it does blow my mind that
seeing grown men ask for autographs.
Well, that and like think of it like this: you cheer. So the Olympics. Who do you cheer for?
Norway.
Shut up.
I love Norway, man.
All right, go to New York. Right, go to New York, and during the Olympics, they're all buddies. They're all cheering for America, right? But go to football season, and New Yorkers absolutely hate each other. If
they want to kill each other.
They want to, right? Like you're totally fine cheering for your national team together. But now all of a sudden, when it's an individual, random, arbitrary city team, you don't like each other. Break it down to the high school level, right? Like we're totally fine if you're a member of the Minnesota Wild, but why is that a hockey player versus a Edina hockey player? You're like, you're enemies. You hate each other. So you don't like each other at the city level, but you like each other at the state level. You don't like each other at the state level, depending on where you live, but you like each other at the national level. So like when Earth is competing against other planets, are we going to all like each other on planet Earth?
Yes.
I know.
Yes, we will. But it's so funny you brought that up because I was listening to a podcast. It just auto played, and they were talking about the Vikings game this week. Apparently, they play the Eagles.
They play them this week.
They play them this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and whatever they're playing in Philadelphia, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you talk about the shittiest city in America from a sports standpoint. Like
they're bad fans.
Like they're horrendous. I would never go to a game in Philadelphia just because like people literally beat the shit out of other people.
Yeah.
Over professional sports. Like, guys, you don't play on the team. You don't impact the team's performance.
Oh, I know.
Like, I think that's the thing that I struggle with celebrities is like you can be the super fan, but there's no bond between you and that celebrity, right? Because you're just paying them
Yes.
for the privilege of listening to their music. You're just paying them for the privilege of watching them. You are not a part of it. They're going to play the game no matter what. They're going to get their big paychecks no matter what.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that I've always personally struggled with. Like, why are you spending this much money on a bunch of people that they don't care? They just don't.
Yeah. Well, since we have lost probably half of our listeners by talking bad about
we'll edit this out.
No, we'll definitely keep this in. I want to end each show. This is an idea. You can tell me you're an idiot. Don't do this. But I thought it might be fun. I want to end each show with just a quick overview or just like something cool that happened in the business this week. Because I think it'll be really fun to track the things that really were a struggle and a pain. And like, honestly, I mean, this is what we're working on and struggling with each week or each episode. Are you cool with doing something like that?
Yeah. What do you want to hear? What's
so like, all right, Switchback today. This week? What is the biggest challenge right now in what you're dealing with, Switchback?
Biggest challenge right now that I'm dealing with in Switchback is getting our product into new packaging. So we have only a small percentage of our packaging can start to leak over time. And it's not an issue other than from a cosmetic standpoint. And it's just been this challenge of working through
the way the package is designed and the type of material. When it goes through the sealing process, the sealer can leave a little gap and product can
a tiny gap that can expand over time. And so this piece is, I think for the last month I've been dealing with this, but we finally have a resolution. Now we can move forward. But the problem is, and the toughest thing for me is, it's 30 days until we get to the next step, right? Because we got to redesign, we got to do all of this stuff. That's just a pain in the butt. We need to do it, and it's more money coming. It's more money outflow before we get more money inflow. So that's the challenge this week. And I think, if I could sum that up in one thing, if you think it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And in business, if you're starting a business and you get the answer you want too quick, second guess that. Ask questions. I think you said to me yesterday, you're asking the same question over and over and over again, and it's a good thing. And because I felt like I was nuts. You go, no, you want to be certain this is the last time you have to do this. So, I packaging this week. Next week it'll be new website.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one thing for me that it's not a struggle. It's a little trepidation and nervousness, excitement as the new website is launching. And from a marketing standpoint, do we have the right messaging out there? Does it look good? Do we have a content plan ready to go? Like, do we have the surround ready? Which we don't. We're working on it. But like, I say that because it shouldn't be, again, back to what we've been saying all along today. None of this should be a reason to not move forward, right? Like, oh, we don't have all of our content ready. We don't have our newsletters ready. We don't have all of our social media posts ready. So what? Like, go figure it out, make it happen. So that's big on my mind this week.
It's a great way to close it. Just go. Nothing's gonna be perfect. Get it 90% of the way there and go, and you'll figure everything out on the fly. And that's the best part about being an entrepreneur. You get to solve all the problems, and you get to see how many problems actually occur in business.
Yeah.
And then you can make it better. So go start a business, get out there, build it, have fun, and reach out to us. If you're looking for mentors, if you're looking for connections, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We believe in generosity. We believe in reciprocity. So if we can help you, let us know.
Bingo. I love that. If last thing to say, if you made it this far, we appreciate you. And Oli really means that. We were talking about this off camera earlier today about how cool it would be to build an ecosystem where we literally just lift each other up and help people and, give advice and tips and tricks and things we're dealing with. So we are going to form a community. We don't know what we're going to call it yet, probably some sort of Facebook group, but look for that coming up. In the meantime, if you got any value out of this at all, if you enjoyed the conversation, if there's something we said that was, sparked a thought or popped someone's head into your head, someone's face into your head, you know what I mean? And you think they would benefit from this, share the show, please. The more we share this, the more people will listen and join and lift this whole community up. So share the show. That's our only ask.
Awesome. Until next week.
Adios. Bye, everyone.
See ya.